Welcome everybody. Welcome to this webinar on literacy and analytical strategies in the digital realm. I am Devin Hess. I'm with the UC Berkeley History Social Science Project. Resources for this workshop can be found at bit.ly/Padlet-Zoom1. And this tutorial is a part of a webinar series put on by the UC Berkeley Professional Development Provider Network that has been very active during this COVID-19 school closure crisis. Today we're going to be looking at a strategy known as evidence analysis and relevance. We're going to be combining that with a Google Doc add-on known as the Highlighters tool developed by Jason Chin, and we'll be looking at a couple different ways of using that strategy. This workshop is based on the question, how can digital tools help students comprehend complex online academic text? We all know that it's hard for students to often make sense of even paper-based text. And now that we are in a situation where we have to bring it to the digital realm, we're trying to look at some strategies that we use paper-based and port them to the online realm. The readings that are included in that Padlet, I would encourage you to read before continuing. There are 2 articles on the use of annotations and the meaning of deep reading and as it's impacted by the digital platform. And one of the quotes from one of the articles is, "The trick to being a good reader, no matter the medium, is being an engaged reader." That includes reading with intention, and that means that we as teachers need to scaffold the various analytical lenses that we want our students to bring to that. And as always, we have to help the students collaborate to talk and share ideas as a way to develop academic language and investigate the concepts that we're trying to provide on a deeper level. Reading with intention is about inquiry. If you have a focused inquiry question that you include on every document, everything that you hand students, that give a purpose for the reading. It gives intention for the reading. They know why they're reading it. It's in order to answer the inquiry. I'm not going to go into it, but we have strategies that we can share with you on deconstructing the prompt with the students so that they really understand exactly what their goal is as they do the assignment with you. The analytical lens that we're going to be offering first is known as an ear chart, which is short for evidence, analysis, and relevance. The evidence piece is, what can I find in this document or this primary source that's related to the prompt? The analysis is to take that evidence and say, well, what does this evidence that I found mean? And the relevance is the very important part of making it connect to the question itself, asking, how does it help me answer the focus question? This is the piece that students find the hardest to do. We know as teachers that they can often find evidence, they can even make claims about them, but the so what, the why does it matter, why does it fit into the argument they're making, is the most difficult part. Here's a basic ear chart. We'll look at it more closely in the digital version in a minute. When we do this on paper, and we can also do it in digital, we always encourage that the students do a read-through before doing any of the analytical work. And in this read-through, they're going to be looking for words they don't understand, phrases, maybe colloquial expressions, and they'll circle those. And before you get into the analysis part, you as a class or they in their groups will make sense and define and help understand those pieces that they don't know. The second read-through, they're finding the key words, and they'll highlight those key words or phrases as evidence to help answer the focus question. And in our situation, I'm going to be demonstrating this where they are finding keywords that fit into categories of analysis. Lastly, they'll enter those keywords into their chart, and they'll complete the middle and the right-hand column where they provide the analysis and understanding of the relevance to the question that they're looking at. So at this point, I'm going to demonstrate the ear chart and show how the highlighter tool can make that a very easy process for students to engage with. And then I will walk you through the installation of the highlighter tool itself and provide documents with which you can practice. Before I go further, at this point I would encourage you to read the article Can students go deep with digital text? It's on the Padlet. If you go to the bit.ly/Padlet-Zoom1, it will take you to the Padlet that has a link to this text. This is the Padlet. It's an interesting tool to organize various documents, pictures, anything you or students can put up. You can categorize it by column headings. In our case, we're going to be using this document here. This document is our launch sheet. Coming up to the top. That opens it in a new window. Here is the article I would like you to read to get a sense of where we're going with this conversation. When you have students read their article, the idea is to get them to engage with it on a deeper level. We're going to be using the ear strategy, and in this case, what I've actually asked them to do in this ear chart is I've asked them to find evidence, but not just any evidence. I'm asking them to categorize the evidence that they find. These categorizations can be based on the article in particular or whatever you're examining in particular, or they can be more generic like the grapes or the Persias or the different kinds of acronyms that we use in history to have students examine various aspects of society or history. What we're going to be doing here in a typical sense, if you're doing this paper-based or without the tool that I'm going to be showing you, is you might take a section of text, copy it, use my Control-C, and then you could paste it down here. This is a first characteristic of deep reading. I'm going to come back up, find a second characteristic of deep reading here, for example. And I could basically continue doing this. You can move on to the next category as you like. The important part of the ear chart, though, comes here in the analysis piece. The question becomes now, if I'm going to analyze this, what am I looking for? How do I make sense of this particular collection of information here? And in this case, I might say, well, this tells me that deep reading is an active process that involves interaction with the text. Well, in that case, I've just made sense of the evidence, but I haven't applied it to the focus question itself. So what does that deep reading do? How does that help you? So I have to make another statement, and this is the analytical piece that the kids need to be, that is hardest for the kids. Here I'm saying, well, deep reading is critical for comprehension because I'm talking about comprehension in the question. Okay? Now, this is a fairly tedious process to do it. Often you'll do it by hand if you're doing paper-based, but copy-paste is a long way to do it, and this is where I want to introduce the highlighter tool. So what the highlighter tool is, it's an add-on in Google Docs, and you simply, once you've added it on, I'll show you how to do that in a bit, you start the highlighter tool. And the highlighter tool allows you to import a particular set of highlights that connect to a particular document. I'll show you about that later. For right now, what we basically have now is a series of colors. Each color is given a tag or label. And notice these labels exactly match the categories that I'm asking the students to explore. So now when I find the pieces of evidence I want, I can click on here. Now I've highlighted this, referencing this category. Good readers are active readers engaged with the text. And highlight that category. Through marginal annotations, here's an example of a characteristic of deep reading, marginal annotations. Now the next one, you can write right on the text. Well here, this is a benefit of print. You can just write right on the page. I'm going to click on that. You can also flip back and forth easily. That's a benefit of print text. And there's a spatial relationship. There's a spatial relationship to digital text, to print text. So if I were to continue highlighting the rest of the document, categorizing it according to this category scheme and with these colors, I might end up with a document that looks something like this. Here you see I've been able to take the different categories, apply them to different aspects of the text. And now I'm wanting to fill in my chart. Notice that at the bottom of this add-on tool, this right-hand panel, I have this option to extract highlights. I can choose it by sequence or by color. In this case, sequence is not going to be very interesting. I basically would get a hodgepodge of digital benefits, print benefits, challenges, digitals, there would be no organization to it. Because I've created categories, I want to extract it by color based on those categories. So I'm going to click extract by color. Now I have the choice of putting those extracted highlights. What is going to happen is it's going to pull the text right out, and I can either put that into a new document, I can put it at the bottom of the current document, or I can collect it on a specific document that I choose by entering the document URL here. In my case, I'm going to collect it to the bottom of the current document. I'm going to extract it, and at this point I can go down to the bottom of the text and notice what I have down here. Here are my text that I highlighted in the different colors. It puts the tool puts the label that we have on the color with the text that we highlighted there. But I want to put this into a chart. I want to make this part of the ear chart. So what I can do at this point is I can collect the text here. I'm going to go up and edit copy. Now I'm going to go back up to my ear chart and I'm going to paste that text in. I can at this point deal with some of these little spaces that it adds kind of on its own. I can come along here and basically remove the color. I'm going to remove the color by making the backs transparent, and I'm going to remove the highlights. So now I just have the text. Now this is the same as if I copied and pasted it in. Then at this point, I would have students look at each of these collections of text and analyze each group of text. So what do you make of this? Analyze. What do you make of this? Analyze. And then the most important is once I've looked at that collection of evidence relating to that category and I've given some understanding of what that evidence says, now I want to relate it to the focus question. So once again, I might do it column by column, and were I to do all of that, I could end up with something that looks like this. Now here I've also put bullets on here, but that's not necessary. But I came from my extracted text to my ear chart in this way. At this point, the kids have a deeper understanding of the text than if they had just read it, and even if they had read it and done annotations and highlights. In both cases, because they had been forced to engage with it by asking questions, they will have, this is part of what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, now we will walk through installing the highlighter tool and then applying it to this ear strategy. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to go back to that Padlet. It's at bit.ly/Padlet-Zoom1. That will take you to this Padlet website. The document, the resource sheet, the launch sheet is this one in the far left-hand corner here. You can preferably open it in a new window so you see it full size. And this link here will take you to the highlighter tool installation. This is in the Google Marketplace. You will install. Mine is already installed, so you don't see that here, but you will click the button that says install. You'll accept the permissions, and once you've done that, return to this video, okay? I'll let you pause and then come back to it in just a second. So assuming you got that installed, now we're going to look at the highlighter tool itself, and I'm going to send you to a document. And there's an interesting thing about this document. It will force you to make a copy. Now I know you can use Google Classroom to do that, but there's this little tip that if you replace the ending of the URL where it has your URL /edit, and there might be some other stuff, with /copy instead, when someone clicks on that link, it will force them to make a copy, as you will see. Then I'll ask you to start the highlighter tool and then import the highlighter set, and we will walk through those steps one by one. Okay, at this point, I'd like you to open one of these documents. There's multiple copies because when we did this webinar, there were several hundred people on, and not that many people can open a document at the same time. Notice that URL with the copy after it. You're going to make a copy of your own, and then on your copy, you will start the highlighter tool. So that is done by coming up here to the top where it says add-ons. This is where all the add-ons that you put into your Google Docs are stored. You will come down to the highlighter tool and simply press start. It asks you whether you want to import a highlighter set. Say yes. I'll be explaining that feature in a minute. Now notice that everything I'm explaining are detailed in these tutorial boxes here that are scattered throughout the document as you need them. Along with these are little GIFs that will play the sequence of the steps I do so that you can follow along. Here it's showing us how we activated the highlighter program, and this is the step we're at. Now, I've already highlighted this just so that you could have some text to work with. What I'm asking you to do is to go down and highlight the rest of the part. Notice the focus question. Every single document that I give my students, I will have at the top of it the focus question that directs the inquiry, that directs the intention of what it is they're doing with that document. In our case, the question is, how does the digital realm impact students' ability to find meaning in text? And these are the ways we're going to categorize the evidence. So I've done this in the highlights in the first paragraph, in the first section, but you can come down to the second section and do it yourself. This gives you more highlights to work with when you get ready to extract it. So here's step 2. This is the step in which the students will talk and decide what to highlight based on the focus question. I highly encourage students to work together, to verbalize and to talk as they do the work. It deepens their engagement with the text. So go ahead and continue working on this document, your document, and take a minute and add highlights to the rest of the text here. When you've done that, come back and we'll go to the third step. In this third step, what you're going to do is extract the highlights by color. And again, there's a tutorial for it. Come down here, extract by color. Click on that. Select current document and extract. Go down to the bottom of your document. Find your text. Copy it. Notice there's this other text down below. That's because I used text boxes that had color in them for the sake of emphasis. Ignore that at this time. I would advise when you give it to your students not to include color in your text boxes, just so not to confuse them. So then you'll paste that in here, and again you're going to select that whole column, remove the highlighting, remove the color, so you get back to text, and then take a minute before moving on and actually read through a row here. Look at the evidence, think about how you would summarize that evidence, and then make a statement that connects that evidence to the focus question. I'd like you to take a minute to do that, coming back, because again, this is not about the tool. The tool is only a tool. It depends on how you use that. What is the strategy? What is the analytical lens and scaffolding that you're providing the students? That's what gives the tools in the digital realm their power, is when they are connected and working in the service of a literacy or analytical strategy. Once you have done this, you will end up with something that hopefully looks like this, where you have your full ear chart. And then at that point, that can be a launching scaffold for essay, or combining this with other readings that they might be doing for DBQ, or other kinds of ways that you're going to take this. It might be part of a research project, or it might just be a standalone exploration. What I'd like to do now is introduce another way to use the tool, because we were categorizing and extracting by color. There's another way to use the tool that takes advantage of the extract by sequence option. One example of that is to use it to analyze text structure. I call this highlights and outlines. And again, you would have the students pre-read, identify words they don't understand. Then they will do perhaps highlight a text structure, discuss it, and come to consensus, and then outline the text. And I'll show you what that looks like. To demonstrate this next strategy of creating outlines using the highlighter tool, we are using a second article. It again will be linked on that launch sheet that's in the Padlet. And in this case, we have a different task. I'm going to start the highlighter tool. And in this case, I'm bringing in a different series. And notice how this pops up as a prompt to import a particular set. This is the set associated with this document. I'll explain how to do that later. And in this case, what I'm looking for is the structure of text. I'm looking for how a text develops, introduces a thesis, how it introduces multiple claims that are then defended by evidence. Some of that evidence has more detailed sort of sub-evidence or supporting evidence of at a finer level of detail than a particular piece. There's often analysis, and then the paper or the article will often end with a conclusion. So this is the structure I'm going to use this time. And in this case, for example, as I read it through, what I come up with, what I find here is the thesis statement is posed as a question. The question we ask here is, will a technique that is so easy to use actually help students learn? So now we're going to look for a claim. I see this often as the topic sentence of a paragraph. There's a claim. I'm going to highlight that as a claim. I'm going to then read it through, and I'm reading through, and I find here there's reference to marked text draws attention. So that's some evidence. Another, additional processing should be required. So there's another piece of detail. And you continue on, and if you were to continue on like this, you would end up with a document that looks something like this. So here we have in red, we have the thesis inquiry. We have in yellow, we have claim statements. We have evidence or detailed, and then analysis. And notice down here we have, again, an evidence and then a detailed evidence that kind of goes a further level in. Okay? Now in this case, categorizing it by color would also be meaningless. I would put all the claims in one place. I would put all the pieces of evidence or details that are put randomly throughout the article. I clump them together, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for it more as a linear structure of a development of an argument. So I'm going to extract this by sequence. And again, I'm going to put it at the bottom of the current document. Can extract. And at this point, what I end up with is thesis, claim, thesis, claim, thesis, claim, evidence, analysis. Okay? Now, here's something interesting we can do at this point. This is interesting in itself, but if you want to get really fancy with it, and it's not that difficult, I would come here and I would remove the background color. And I'm also going to merge the cells, okay? Merge the cells. That puts all the cells of a table into one large cell, and it's done by right-clicking on your mouse. Now I have in red are the thesis statements, in yellow are the claims, and then I have the sort of arguments to support the claims. And this again is interesting in its own, but I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to select all that text. I'm going to come up here to our tool that adds a numbered list. I'm going to click on that. And now since the thesis, I'm going to take that out of the outline. But now we can play with this like a true outline. I can get rid of the ones that are just sort of empty in space. But here, if I come here and press the tab mark, that indents me into a second level of the outline. Get rid of the little meaningless one. Indent, indent. So here I've got the claim, I've got some evidence, I've got a decision, a conclusion about that evidence. Here I've got my second claim with some evidence. So here's my next piece of evidence. Press tab. Here's my next. Now notice this is it's blue. This is a detail of the evidence, so it's going to be indented twice. And here we're going to indent it twice. I can remove the highlighting color, and I basically have an outline structure of the text. You can use this to have students dig deep into a text. If a student can outline a flow of an argument like this, that means they really have engaged deeply. Another way you can use this is you can have them use it for their own essay that they might write, or you can use that as a peer review where one student will do this activity on another student's essay in order to really highlight and pull out what is the text structure, what is the flow of the argument, how is evidence and details being used to justify claims and support claims. If you want to play with this document, I've given you one that is partly, if you come down here, you've got ones that are partly highlighted for you to play with. Again, you have to make a copy. And this one, unfortunately, does not have the same level of instructions on it, but I've given you a starting point that you can go and create your own highlighter. You will see that, again, here at the bottom is that associate code, so that when you press the highlighter tool and start it, it will ask you to import that set. Okay? So this is the highlight tool. Next, we're going to look at how to create these highlight sets. And that's done in the highlighter library. If you simply click on the highlighter library, it takes you to your library. And I have a lot of different highlights sets that I've created over time. You can collapse them or you can expand them. Here's one that I use for categorization that's sort of simple, based on economic, social, political. Here's one that is thesis, main idea, supporting detail, subdetail. Here's one that have to do with historical themes. This is the one we just now are using. Benefits, challenges, this is the one we did earlier. You can create a new set by clicking this green New Set button. Give the set a name, New Set I'm going to call it. You first label a name, first label. Then you are going to, you can change the color. I often suggest making it a little fainter so it isn't quite so brilliant. You add another highlight here. Select the color you want for this one. Maybe make it a little more pale. And once you finish your highlight set, if you press save, watch what happens. It activates that highlight set as your new set. Okay? Now, the next question is, okay, I've created a highlight set. I put it, I want the students to use that highlight set. How do I get them to use the highlight set that I have created? This uses the associate feature. So this is the highlight set I want to use with this document that I'm giving my students. I want to make sure that this is their set. I don't want to have to walk 35 or 40 kids through creating this set. That would be nightmarish. I'm going to come up here, go to the add-on, find my highlighter tool, and I'm going to click this button called Associate. And when you click Associate, what it does is you can choose what you want to associate, which of your highlighter libraries you want to associate with the document. Now, it actually defaults to selecting the one that is active. So usually all you have to do is hit export. And what that has done is it puts some text, a little code at the bottom of your document that when you open that document, the tool sees that there's this code and it prompts you to import this set to associate with the document that you just opened. That's what we've done twice. Okay? So those are some of the tricks of the tool. Another feature of this highlighter tool is that if you have a set of highlights that you have created that you like, or you and your colleagues have collaborated, and some of you have created some and some of you have created other ones and you want to share them, there is another feature of the highlight tool. You can come here and go to Export or Import Library. First, you need to export it. Come to Export. What that does is similar to the Associate. I'm going to come along here and pick which of these I want to share with my colleague. So I might pick 3 or 4. I will say Export. And what that does is it creates a document that's a standalone document. And in this document, you will see that you have, here is the first set I selected, here is the second highlighter set I selected, the third highlighter set I selected. And if you share this document, as in the way you normally share a document, another teacher or colleague can come along to the highlighter tool and choose to import that library. Basically, this is exactly the same as the associate. There is the items that are in this library that I just brought in. I can choose to import them all or just some of them, and then I press import. And it imports it and brings it in. And now I've added these to my library. So that's the highlighter tool. Note when you're doing this import, by the way, that you have to be as an owner of the document. You have to be able to have editing rights in order to activate the highlighter tool. So that's the highlighter tool, and what I'd like to offer you is to come here. If you have questions about it, please go ahead and add questions, either pedagogical questions or technical questions. I'll look at this from time to time. If you want to get in touch with us, our email is at the bottom of the document here. You can find us and get in touch with us this way. Good luck with it. I have other resources down here about writing a prompt, like I mentioned, prompt deconstruction, some more information about the highlighters with more written example of what I've just talked about. This is a word cloud polling site that I used when I did the original screencast on this. Here's the link to the Padlet as a tool. And some information about the UC Berkeley PD Provider Network, some of the programs coming up, and some of the activities we're involved with. Thank you all. Good luck. Get in touch. Let me know how this goes. And take care. And we will see you next time.